All right. So these are the fundamentals of DJing, and we're starting at the top of this list, and then we're going to work our way through here pretty quickly. At any time, just go ahead and pause this recording. So we're going to start with a few different albums that I've just recently found on Bandcamp that are available for free. As you can see here on the page, it says buy digital album, name your price. So you can click on that. You can put in 0, click on download to your computer. You have to put in an email address and a zip code, and then click OK. And then you'll get this prompt that says an email has been sent with the download instructions. Click OK. Now, for any artist or label that you like their music, I'd recommend clicking on follow. You can see that I'm following. That way you'll get email updates for their next albums that come out. Now, I found 3 of these that I'd recommend checking out, and we're going to use these as examples. I'm just going to go through here and quickly get these downloads prepared. Just going through and choosing to download for free and clicking OK. And now what we see here is we have the new messages from each of those artists or labels. It says, go ahead and click here to download that album. And what happens when you click on that link is you get an option here to download the album. It'll say preparing until it's ready, and then it'll say download. You can change the option for what quality you'd want it to download by clicking on this area here. I choose ALAC, Apple Lossless, which is most compatible with the Apple computers and iTunes. If you weren't on an Apple computer, then you could choose FLAC or WAVE or AIF. All of those are highest quality, but as you'll notice, the LAC, the lossless audio codec, are much smaller, about 105 megabytes per album versus the WAVE and AIF, which are about the same at 180. Then we have the lossless formats like MP3 320 bit rate, which is much smaller, but is a lossy format. So we'll go ahead and click on download. And as we can see, a download starts. And we have this album coming pretty quickly. We'll just go ahead over to these other albums and do the same thing. Clicking on download. And clicking on download. Now I can see that all these are downloading. Now in Safari, I can click on the magnifying glass next to the download, and it will show it to me in the downloads folder. I'm going to minimize Mail, and I'm going to minimize Safari, and now I'm just looking at our downloads. Now we have 2 albums that are ready, 1 that is still finishing. I'm going to go ahead and open up these by double clicking on them. And if your application that you use to decompress these files, I use one called Kika, which you can set up to automatically delete the file after it expands it. But the archive utility works a little bit differently. You'll end up with 2 copies. So after you expand one of them, you just go ahead and move to trash the other one. But using Kika, it does it all for you. Now we have all 3 of these albums, and we're going to go ahead and import these into iTunes so we can start working with them. Okay, so before we import these, we want to open up iTunes. That way, automatically add to iTunes will start working on them right away, and that won't mix any of them up. If we just dragged all these into our automatically add to iTunes folder without having iTunes open, then it would mix them up and it wouldn't have them separated. But now that it's open, we can go ahead and drag all three over the automatically add to iTunes folder. And in a second here, we should see them all come into our iTunes database. And we're seeing them at the top because we are organized by date added in these columns. Or just as a reminder, right click on the top column here and add a column date added in order to see your files like this. Another one that's helpful is bit rate and the kind and the sample rate. I'll let you see all of them that I have open. Okay, now that we've got these new ones in here, first thing that we're going to do is we're going to give them a half-star rating. And this is to make sure that we know that we have not listened to these yet and we're ready to listen to them and figure out whether or not we want to keep them and if we possibly want to use those in our DJ library. We're going to use a script to make this happen. And in the very top of our screen, we click on the scripts that we've installed and set star rating to half star. Now that they all have a half star, we can sync these to our phone by syncing our Sync New Tracks smart playlist to our iPhone. This is the rules for that smart playlist. And we can start doing some of the rating and the loving or disliking on the go. Going back to songs here, we're going to go ahead and just do these as a test. So I'm not going to actually listen to these. I'm just going to give them some random marks here. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I love them all so that we can go through the process of getting these entered into our DJ library. Everything with the love is going to end up in our needs work section here so that we can start editing the metadata and making it so that it's easy to make playlists or just play on the fly. So at the very top of our needs work playlist, smart playlist here, this is another smart playlist which finds songs that are loved and with the bitrate any more than 1410. And as we can see, some of these have excessively high bit rates. And so we're going to go ahead and just make those into CD quality bit rates. And the other ones that are Apple lossless, sometimes the codec that encodes these doesn't show the actual bit rate, it shows the CD quality. So I like to run those through and just re-encode them as Apple lossless. So what we're going to do here first is we're going to select the ones that are excessively high in bit rate. We're going to use the convert and replace script. We're going to convert them to AIF so that we keep the metadata, we keep the album artwork and all that. We'll click OK. And with a fairly fast computer, this should go pretty quickly. Okay, now it says finished. What we'll do next is go ahead and select everything by clicking on the top one, holding Shift, and clicking on the bottom one. Get back to this window here for convert and replace. I'm going to change it now to lossless encoder and click OK. And what's going to happen is the bitrate is going to go down to 800 or 900, which is typical for a lossless but CD quality file. And since it will be no longer 1411 or above, they will automatically be removed from this smart playlist. Okay, now next we're going to go down to the prep artist tag in capitalization, and we're going to look at the rules for this. This is where the track is loved, so we know that it's meant to go into our DJ library, but it doesn't have an artist. And so we want to make sure that all of these have artists. This one I know is from developed, so I'm going to go ahead and put that into the artist column. And I know that this is a track by Rich Boy, and it is Throw Some D's, a remix. It has some weird characters, so I'm going to remove those. When you're doing the artist, it's always good to do the original artist. If it's a remix by Venice Venture, then that's fine. Let's actually mix this around. This is called Throw Some D's. It's a Venice Venture remix. All right. And we'll take Rich Boy. There we go. So that's what the proper song title would look like. Throw Some D's, Venice Venture, Big Wild remix by Rich Boy. All right, now that everything has an artist, we're gonna move down to the album artist tag, and we always want to have the album artist filled because that's how everything gets organized into folders in iTunes. So what we can do here is do a selection of everything, use another script for this, and we're going to use artist to album artist. And that's easy enough. Moving on to prepping the album tag. A lot of them tracks don't have an album, they're just singles, so this is an optional step. But if you know what the albums are and you want to have them put into an album folder, then you can put in the album at this time. But we're going to move on. We're going to go to the mixed in key section, and this is a multi-part section. First thing that we want to do is we want to, and you'll see that there's songs here that are other than the ones that we just added, which is just these. So I've got some work to do aside from what we're doing here, but we'll just work on these ones for now. So what we want to do is we want to select all of our tracks that we're working on, and Mixed in Key puts the information into the comments field. So there's a couple of ways to do this. One way is to say get info and go to the comments, press the space bar, and then press OK. The other way to do it is to use the multi-item edit, which is another app from the guy who makes all of our scripts. And you can put in the comments there and just check this box and press apply. And that'll remove all that data from the comments field so that we can then put in our mixed in key information. So a quick way to open up mixed in key is Command and space to open up Spotlight. Type in MIX and mixed in key should pop right up. All right, and now that we've got mixed in key open, we can resize the windows so that we can put them side by side. So it's a little easier to drag. There's a couple of ways to do this. So you can just drag these over into this area here, or you can start dragging. You can press Command and Tab and move over to mixed in key, and then mixed in key will come to the front, and then drop them. And we'll see these start to get processed. As they're completed, they will update and say completed. We need to wait until they all say completed. Okay, as soon as that's done, we can close mixed in key. We're done with that for now. We're going to leave all these ones highlighted that we had highlighted, and we're going to use the refresh selected tag script. And as you can see, as soon as we click on that, all of the comments were populated with all the info from mixed in key. And they immediately left here, this prep mixed in key playlist, because this is only showing things that do not contain any of the mixed in key tags, like 1A, 2A, all those different Camelot wheel tags. So moving on to prepping the star ratings, that's going to be for songs that don't have our stars that we put in, but we did that immediately. I did that in the beginning of the video. So moving on from there, we're going to prep the comments, which is to where we back up our star ratings. Okay, so with all of our tracks in this section, we're going to copy the star ratings over to the comments in case our iTunes database fails or something goes wrong with our hard drive or something like that. We won't lose the star ratings that are here. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on rating so that we organize all these by rating. We're going to do a highlight of the ones that are the same. So right now we have the 1 star, these are the 2 stars, these are the 3 stars, these are the 4, and that's the 5. And we're going to select those two with 1 star. We're going to use the script called append to selected tag. And with this one, what I want to do is put it in the comments, and I want to put it in the beginning. And I'm going to do a star, which is Shift 8, and a space, so that that's what it's going to look like. And I'm going to go ahead and say proceed. Yes, and as you see, what happens there is the stars go in ahead of the comments, and then we'll move on to the next ones without closing the script, so that we do with the next ones. And so we'll come back to it, just add another star and say proceed. Yes. And we're just going to move down and do the same, keeping to add a star, say proceed. Do the 4 after the 3. And the last one being the 5. All right. So, and that's all these, the star ratings are actually tagged with the files, not just in iTunes now, which is good. All right, moving on, we need to work on our vibe tags. So with the vibes that we have here, we have what we do is manually select these. And this is another one where you can use multi-item edit, because then you have the field open here where you can push space, and you can do, oops, you can do your tag like opener, groover, whatever, and then you can click apply. Otherwise, if you don't want to use that, you have to click on it till it's highlighted. Click again on the right side of your key, and then do your shortcut for whichever vibe it has. So if it's a groover, that would be, for me, it'd be semicolon 3, and then groover goes in. Then I'd move on to the next one and say this is semicolon 4, say it's a banger. Let's say this is also a banger. And this one, let's say it's a groover. This one is a groover. Let's say this is a warmer. keep on. Let's say this is an opener, and let's say this is a closer. And that's about it with iTunes. If you want, you can update the artwork. Anything without an artwork will show in here. None of those that we just imported have those. This is all stuff from before. And we all optionally have smart playlists that I've created for corrupt or fake files. But that's unnecessary stuff. That's more like homework or extra stuff for making sure that your library is in tip-top shape.